Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2024 Worldwide Technologies DFS Tactics show. As usual, we have a lot to cover. This evening, we are going to look at the forecast for Cabo. We're going to look at the up to the second projected ownerships. And, of course, I have my rankings and my thoughts on the price board for this week's Worldwide Technologies. Looking forward to it. Let's get right into it. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from fantasynational.com. It is the best golf analytic tool out there for your money. It's going to make you a much smarter golf gambler and a much better golf DFS player. Go check out fantasynational.com. You will not regret it. In the description to the video, there are links to all of the social media. First off, my X and Instagram, where normally I post research regarding winners of the tournament, patterns that they all share. Didn't do anything for the Worldwide Technologies because there was only one year of data. But if you want to see the weekly research that I normally do on the PGA Tour, give me a follow at your preferred social media site. X is also where I place my weekly betting cards and top player usage in the DFS contest I play. That comes out every Wednesday evening after the DFS Tactics show. So that'll be out later this evening over on X. If you want to see those pieces of information, give me a follow over at X. And then lastly, for social media, Gabe's handle is in the description. He writes a great article called The Fringe. It's a great way to start your week of preparation. He provides you with his own version of research throughout the week. And if you are a subscriber to his article, which is free to do, you're going to be able to join us in his Substack chat every Wednesday evening, meaning tonight, after the DFS Tactics show here at Calls. As we continue the DFS talk over there. It's very informative, very entertaining, a lot of fun. You really are missing out if you are not subscribed to his article, so make sure you're doing that. Also, go follow him over on social media. Show him some support. Lastly, we're live. Chat's open. Want to hear from you all. I've got the poll question typed up, so I'll post that momentarily. Who's your winner this week? How do you think this tournament's going to play? Who are you targeting, staying away from? Are you playing any 6K plays? All of that. Feel free to jump in chat. Would love to interact with you all this evening. Want to hear from the community. So chat is open. Let's get into it. Let's figure out our strategies and our tactics for the 2024 Worldwide Technologies Championship. And we are going to start as we usually do, as soon as I center this camera, with the super forecast here at Windfinder for Cabo. And while you get your first look at the forecast for at least tomorrow, take a drink here and I'll post the poll question. The poll question, quite interesting because there's been a couple of field changes, so a little bit of foreshadowing here. A couple of field changes, but the poll question, with only one 10K player in the field this week, or on the price board, how viable are stars and scrubs lineups? So I will post that. Would love to hear the community's thoughts on this. So please answer and feel free to jump in chat with your thoughts on it. I only have 4 options. So are they very viable, reasonable, little, or not at all? Taking a look at the forecast for Cabo. Very little wind for tomorrow. Now, the gusts could pick up in the afternoon tomorrow. And then Friday, there's very little wind all day. Looks just like a beautiful day for golf. Really, both days. You could make the argument that perhaps the Thursday AM portion of the draw has a slightly favorable draw just due to the forecasted little bit of gustier winds Thursday PM. I'm not really factoring this in. If I'm making some tough decisions, I might use it as a tiebreaker. But to me, I'm just playing the guys I'm most confident that I think are going to play El Cardinal the best. Again, maybe a slight Thursday AM favor, but I don't see much here at all. And if we zoom out, take a look at the weekend, very little wind Saturday, very little wind Sunday, no precipitation in the forecast. So really, this is just a week to play your guys, in my opinion. And if a wave advantage develops, I would tend to think it would be the Thursday AM because of maybe this slightly gusty wind Thursday PM, but I'm not factoring it in. So with that, we will move to Fantasy National. And two field changes that I alluded to in the intro. Most notably, Cam Young has withdrawn. He has decided not to play. Sean O'Hare has taken his spot in the field. Bud Cauley has also decided not to play. And it's escaping me who is filled in or who is the alternate for Bud Cauley. But the most notable field change from Monday to tonight, Cam Young is not in the field. And that is the onus of what I posted as the poll question, since we only have one 10K player now. We'll get into my mixed condition model here soon, but I want to start the evening off with a little bit of review. And you'll notice that I have the 2024 season filter selected, all rounds in 2024. We've spent a lot of time talking about Paspalum and its lack of data this week. With El Cardinal being very, very easy. It was very easy last year. I do not see that changing, especially with very little wind. It's a resort course, 60-yard wide fairways. This is just going to be easy for professionals. With that being the case, a lot of times easy tournaments turn into putting contests. But the issue with this is because this is in Cabo, we don't get shot link data. We didn't last year. We generally don't get shot link data for Paspalum courses because they're international. So what are we going to do here? It's an inexact science. We can take a look at strokes gained total Paspalum as maybe an indicator, and that's certainly fair. We've done that all week. But what I'm going to show you tonight, because I think this is going to turn into a birdie fest and a putting contest, your top putters in 2024, all of 2024, no filters other than that. So we're not looking at Paspalum, we're not looking at slow, we're not looking at anything other than just putting. Who has been the top putters that are in the field this week? Those players are Max Grazerman, Taylor Montgomery, Harris English, Pearson Coody, S.H. Kim, Justin Suh, Jacob Bridgman, Chad Ramey, Matt Kuchar, Vince Whaley. Those are your top 10 putters in the field this week, 2024. Again, I'm doing this because I truly think this is going to turn into a birdie fest and a putting challenge, or a putting contest. And with no Paspalum data, all we can look at is the totality of a player's performance. I decided to go all the way back to all of 2024 just to get enough rounds for it to be significant. Some other players in here, Bo Hostler, Justin Lauer, Mav McNeely, EVR, Sam Stevens, and even Cameron Champ, 17th in putting, which is wild to think about. But in 2024, he was pretty good, especially early. He hadn't been as good lately. But at the other end of the spectrum, players who have not been good putting in the field this week: Joel Damon, Callum Tarrant, Camilo Villegas, Josh Teeter, Tom Whitney, Ryan Moore, Joseph Bramlett, who's been a disaster with the putter, Smalley, Adams Vincent, a little surprising, Carl Yuan, Scott Piercy, Berger, Merritt, Toasty, Doherty, Vegas, on down. So hopefully it makes sense why I wanted to start the show with this and keep this in the back of your mind as we move forward this evening when we go through the rankings, because I don't have any putting in my mixed condition model since we don't have paspalum putting data other than Vedanta. So I wanted to keep this in mind for when we're starting to consider players for lineups and whatnot, because this is going to turn into a putting contest. And these greens, at least from what I remember last year, they had some undulation, they had some slope and some break to them. These greens are massive, 8,300 square feet on average. So honestly, something else that we could look at is 3-putt avoidance in the 2024 season. Your top 3-putt avoiders: Pearson Coody, Ben Taylor, Tyler Duncan, Vince Whaley, Taylor Montgomery, Aaron Baddeley, Mav McNeely, Kelly Craft, JJ Spawn, Garrick Higo, Kuchar, Eckroat, Gim, Sanguil, No, Bo Hostler is your top 15 in terms of 3-putt avoidance. And that could be an issue, or that could be a factor this week as well with these massive greens. The only other review I will say for the week, we'll take a look at easy relative to par, and we'll go to the past 2 years. I will limit it to the last 36. Your top performers when rounds have been easy the past couple of years: Harry Hall, Doug Gim, Hayden Springer, Ben Griffin, JJ Spawn, Patrick Rogers, Lucas Glover, Rico Hoey, Bo Hostler, Michael Kim. All right, so I spent some time talking about easy, talking about some putting. What did make my mixed condition model? So the mixed condition model that I have made for the week at the Worldwide Technologies in at El Cardinal, 25% approach. It's going to be a big deal, big greens. It's not enough just to hit the green. You're going to have some proximity. You're going to have to be good with your irons. And you'll notice I only have the last 2 months. We did this Monday night looking at some data for just the fall. And I wasn't confident that I was going to use just fall data in the mixed condition model. I went back and looked at the players who finished in the top 5 last year at El Cardinal. All but one, and the outlier is Ryan Palmer, but all but one were in great form from their fall tournaments. EVR, great form. Kuchar, great form, specifically with the irons. We'll look at EVR just very, very quickly. I mean, he was playing very well in of itself, but you take a look at it last year, gained 4, 5, and 5 coming into El Cardinal. We take a look at Kuchar. Sort on price here. Take a look at Kuchar, who finished runner-up with Camilo Villegas. What his irons were like coming in. He gained at the Fortinet. He had only played once, but he gained with the irons. So every single player that finished in the top 5 at El Cardinal last year had really, really good iron form coming in. And with no shot link data, I generally default to approach. I've put even more into it because I do not believe off the tee is going to matter. Again, these fairways are extremely wide. Eric Van Rooyen on par 5s last year teed off with iron a lot of times. So distance really doesn't matter either. So no off the tee. 25%, a full quarter of the mixed condition model in approach from the fall. 5% around the green. Look, these greens are massive, but scrambling was difficult at El Cardinal last year. The paspalum turf grass is spongy. Players who aren't used to it can have some trouble. So I did not want to ignore around the green. 5% there. 20% in opportunities when rounds are easy. 15% birdies are better when rounds are easy. Look, guys are going to have 30 plus holes under par to compete. EVR shot 27 under last year with, I think, 3 bogeys and a double. I mean, he just had tons and tons and tons of holes where he was under par. To do that, players are going to have to give themselves plenty of opportunities, meaning hitting it close, and who is naturally adept at getting birdies or better, especially when it's easy. 10% in the par 3s, 200 to 225. We spent some time Monday night in the Data Dive show looking at the various lengths of holes and what, at least last year, contributed the most among the par 3s, 4s, and 5s. We saw that more than half of the par 3s came from this range, at least in terms of strokes gained. So 10% here is a little bit heavy maybe, but I mentioned it all week that I was going to be heavy on the par 3s because I do think they play with some importance at El Cardinal. 5% on the shorter par 4s, 400 to 450, 10% 450 to 500 par 4s, and then to round out the mixed condition model, 10% on the par 5s, 550 to 600. There is a look at the mixed condition model that I have made for this week at El Cardinal and the Worldwide Technologies. We'll move to Microsoft Excel in the reveal of the rankings. My rankings are based on 3 criteria. So, as a reminder, if you're a returning viewer, for your information, if you're a new viewer, my rankings are based on 3 criteria. The FNGC rank, which is a straight numerical ranking from Fantasy National based on the mixed condition model we just went over, the metrics and percentages that we just covered. Course value is an attempt at giving a player a numerical value based on how well they have played that course the past 5 years. Since El Cardinal has only been seen once, anyone who played last year just has their finish in here. See, Carson Young finished 9th. Gim finished tied for 15th. EVR with the win. So, course value, how well they have played that course, the lower the number, the better. And we are playing DFS. So, projected ownerships per Fantasy National also are a factor into my rankings. We're trying to find unique players. So, if a player is very unique, Joseph Bramlett, he's going to rise a decent amount. All right. My rankings for the Worldwide Technologies go as such. Michael Kim is my number 1 player. Keith Mitchell, second. Nick Hardy, Doug Gim, and Lucas Glover round out my top 5. Patton Kazire, Harry Hall, Justin Lauer, Carson Young, and Ben Griffin round out my top 10. Let me make sure I've got chat up and going. Yep. So, not a whole lot of surprise, I don't think, among my top 10. Maybe a little bit surprised that Carson Young snuck his way into the top 10, but his irons have been fairly decent in the fall. He's very good at giving himself opportunities. He just has to convert them. But otherwise, again, not a whole lot of surprise here. Keith Mitchell's irons haven't been great in the fall, but we all know he's a very, very, very good ball striker. It's his putter that holds him back. Michael Kim has been pretty solid, and he generally plays easy course as well. So there's a look at my rankings. You see the 3 guys that are the most unique among the majority of my top 10 have really risen. You see Doug Gim, 3rd by Fantasy National, but falls a little bit because he's so projected owned. Harry Hall really falls considering he's 25% projected owned, so on and so forth. All right, there's a look at my top 10. Enough rambling on that. Let's sort on the price board, figure out where members of Fantasy National seem to be going on the price board, and let's see if we can figure out perhaps some pivots off of what seems to be a lot of chalk, especially up top. I'm going to talk about Max Grazeman with the 9s because there's only one 10K player now that Cam Young is withdrawn. So in the 9s and 10K, you have Grazerman, Ben Griffin, Bo Hostler, Doug Gim, Matty Schmid, Lucas Glover, Mav McNeely, Harry Hall, Keith Mitchell, and JJ Spawn. See, most of these guys rated out very, very well, with the exception of Matty Schmid, and I'm actually fairly high on Schmid. Fairly high. There's a couple players in here that I'm going to shy away from, mainly just due to the fact that they've been withdrawal risks, and they didn't necessarily play El Cardinal well last year. Those two players are Mav McNeely and JJ Spawn. Now, JJ Spawn is extremely popular. 21% projected ownership, according to Fantasy National. But he was very, very middling last year at El Cardinal. Finished T67. He generally hasn't played very well on Paspalum courses, Caribbean courses either. So that, coupled with the fact that he's withdrawn, fairly recently, and the ownership, this is a pretty easy fade for me. And I'll just take my chances because there's a lot of players I like in this area of the price board. McNeely generally plays well on Paspalum, but he didn't play El Cardinal well, and I don't know. He's always seemingly a withdrawal risk, and I'm just not there. I can't get there with Mav McNeely this week. Everybody else in the 9s and 10K, I can make an argument for. I don't mind using Grazerman. He's very popular, 22%, just like JJ Spawn, or a little bit more than JJ Spawn. But, hard to ignore his runner-up finish at the Zozo. That's why he doesn't have any approach numbers here, because I just took it from the fall, and the Zozo you don't get strokes gain data. But good, number one putter in 2024 in this field. Plays the length of par 4s extremely well. So I like Grazerman. I don't have to use him though because of all this ownership. Hey Awaken, thanks for jumping in chat. It's good to see you this evening. It's been a while. Hopefully things have went well, and you're ready to close out 2024, at least PGA 2024, with a solid finish. Hope you've been well. Looks like Cam Young did us a favor. Well, I was nowhere near Cam Young this week. That was gonna be my big fade, and then he just withdraws. So I have to come up with a new fade now. But I wasn't going to use him. I was gonna suggest using Grazerman over him if you were in the 10Ks. But thanks for jumping in chat, Awaken. Very much appreciated. So yeah, I don't mind Grazerman, but I don't have to use him, especially with all this projected ownership. But don't ignore him. He is the number one putter in this field. A lot of things going well for him. Ben Griffin, interesting. Probably the lowest of the upper 9s I am on anyone. He played well here last year. He can get wayward with the driver, which doesn't matter here at El Cardinal. This is kind of a gut feeling in the sense that I'm the lowest on him. Look, he plays easy courses well. Maybe it's his irons are the worst of, the upper 9s. But it's not, they're not bad per se. Very good around the green, which I think is going to be a factor a little bit this week. There's nothing wrong with Ben Griffin. Much like Grazerman, he's kind of getting a lot of ownership. So, I'll use him, but it's not like I'm going overboard with it. Instead, I don't know why people are seemingly forgetting about Bo Hostler. He is the most unique in the upper nines per Fantasy National. If that's the case, I'm going to go really heavy on Bo Hostler. If he's this much unique against the others. I liked Hostler anyway. Good putter, good around the green. Gets plenty of birdies. Played well here last year. I don't see an issue with Hostler. 12.5% projected ownership versus, like Gim at 22%, 10% less. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I know Gim's in fantastic form versus Bo Hostler, but it's not like Bo Hostler's been bad. So, give me Bo Hostler here in the upper nines. Gim's fine, just, extremely popular. I like Matty Schmid, despite, his ranking against all of these other players. I like Matty Schmid. This is just a ugly, ugly ownership. And that's why I'm gravitating mostly to Hostler, because of his perceived uniqueness. But I'll use a little Griffin. I'll use a couple of Doug Gim. I'll even use some Matty Schmid. But if I'm up here, I'm mainly going to Bo Hostler because of that ownership. And I think he'll play well. He did last year. He's been playing well. I don't see an issue. Moving into the lower nines, I talked about how I'm off of McNeely and JJ Spawn. Do what you want with Keith Mitchell. I'm going to play him once because of his elite ball striking. It's always the putter that holds him back. And in these birdie fests, you got to putt well. You got to make putts to score. And that's, his weakest part of his game. So it bit him at the Sanderson Farms when he 3-putted the 72nd hole to not make that playoff. So, I'll use him once, but that putter really does scare me. That's also kind of why I'm not as high on Doug Gim. Love Harry Hall. This is the chalk I will eat. If I had to choose chalk to eat, it would be Harry Hall. I think this just fits him very, very well. Number one birdie or better gained player in this field when it's easy. Third in opportunities and a good putter. So he's been giving himself a lot of opportunities. He's been converting those opportunities. His iron game has been good. There's nothing not to like about Harry Hall. It's just his ownership is so drastically high. So if you want to fade him, I don't blame you. I mean, it's not like this is Scotty Scheffler, dominating tournaments. I can understand fading him. I'm just going to use him. I'm confident that he'll play well. So again, in the nines, I'm mainly going to Bo Hostler for the uniqueness. Because of the uniqueness, I can take some Harry Hall. I'll have plenty of Lucas Glover as well. It's fine. Number one iron player in the fall. Very good on these longer par fours from 450 to 500. So that's a look at the nines. We move to the eights. I like Harris English. Again, despite the ranking, do not ignore Harris English. He was top 10 in putting in 2024 despite his bad year. The irons have been much, much better lately than what's been showing. Harris English. He's in great form right now. So ignore Harris English at your own risk. Back-to-back top 10s. The irons weren't great at the Shriners, but he putt well. Gosh dang it. The vision skewed. Sorry. 2 back-to-back top 10s. The irons weren't great at the Shriners, but, he's gained 5 both tournaments. The putter is in fuego right now. I like Harris English. I think this is going to be pretty solid for him. So I'll play plenty of Harris English. I'm hoping he's a tad bit more unique than 12.5%, but it's fine. A lot of people are going to gravitate to Johnny Vegas, and I'm going to tell you to be cautious. It makes a lot of common sense why Johnny Vegas. I mean, South American player, plays Caribbean courses a lot. The exceptional ball striker, shaky putter. He also doesn't play the best when it's easy. And you think about Johnny Vegas's best attribute, best strength. It's driving the golf ball. He's an elite driver of the golf ball, long and straight. That's quite mitigated here at El Cardinal. The fairways are extremely wide, and you get a bunch of rollout. So Johnny Vegas's big weapon is neutralized. Again, it makes a lot of sense why Vegas would play well here. I'm just gonna caution you on it. And he's popular. Instead, take a look at last year's champion, the defending champion, EVR. Number 2 in birdies are better when it's easy. Plays long par 4s well. The irons haven't been great this fall, but, you didn't really need them last year to win. Kuchar's fine. Very popular, but Kuchar's fine. One of the 2 runner-ups. And then moving into the lower 7s, Rico Hoey, again, makes a lot of sense. He's been in great form. I had a feeling on Kim, red hot irons. Yeah, I'll get to him here momentarily when we go up to the 7s, or the upper 7s. But Rico Hoey makes a lot of sense. He's been in great form. 3 straight top 25s. One of them a runner-up, or maybe a third. Plays very well when it's easy. Good putter. He's just very popular, so be aware of that. But, again, it makes a lot of sense. To get off the Rico Hoey chalk, I'm going to go in with Patrick Rogers. The dude just plays Caribbean events well. I know people seem to be disgusted with him. He should have had his breakthrough win and yada yada. I'm not picking him to win. I'm putting him in my DFS lineups because I think he's going to be solid. And especially at sub 10%, I like a lot of things with Patrick Rogers this week. He's definitely one of the most talented players in this field, just in terms of raw talent. So give me all of Patrick Rogers I can handle. If he does not play well, I will lose. My poker chips are all in on Patrick Rogers. Again, he doesn't have to win. At 800, he is very, very conveniently priced on whether you're building a Stars and Scrubs or a balanced lineup. I mean, he just fits very, very well. And that ownership is so low compared to everyone else around him. Kuchar, Hoey. I mean, even Berger and Eckroat in the upper 7s are getting more than Rogers. I really like Patrick Rogers this week. And I'll use some Fishburne as well at 8,000, but I mean, if I'm in the low 8s, it's really Patrick Rogers. I will dip my toe in Rico Hoey as well, but he's so popular that it's just really, really difficult to do. Might have to get Hoey chalk and fade Hall. Of those 2, I would play Harry Hall. Would be my suggestion if you're deciding between those 2. But they're both extremely chalky. So if you could find a way to not play both of them, you're gonna be well off, at least, unique compared to your fellow contestants. And that's another reason why I like Patrick Rogers so much. Because while he, rated a little bit lower than Hoey, the irons are still there. He gets plenty of birdies when it's easy. Plays long par 4 as well. There's nothing wrong with Patrick Rogers. I don't understand this whole thing that I've seen on people being out on Rogers. Maybe I'm missing something, but I like Rogers this week. So in the 8s, I'm going to use quite a bit of Harris English. I'm hoping he's a little bit more unique than 12.5%. I wouldn't worry too much about this here. 2 straight top 10s. He's in great form. He's a great putter on in a tournament that's going to turn into a putting contest. Makes a lot of sense for Harris English. I'm going to caution you on Johnny Vegas. It makes a lot of common sense, but there are some underlying things here that I don't think line up well for him. So I'm going to caution you on Johnny Vegas. Kuchar's fine, just very popular. Hoey's fine, just extremely popular. So I'm going to go with Patrick Rogers in the low 8s. Moving into the upper 7s. As you mentioned, Awaken, Number one player in my rankings, Michael Kim. A little bit of a surprise, maybe, but he played well here last year. He's not overly popular, and Michael Kim can get a lot of birdies. He can get a lot of bogeys, but he can get a lot of birdies, and that's what you got to do here. Number one in long par threes, which I think are going to play a decent factor. Third in irons during the fall. So I like Michael Kim quite a bit this week. If he's anywhere in that 10 to 12%, I'm going to be, pretty happy, because I'm going to tell you right now, I'm extremely overweight on Michael Kim. I'm a little concerned with Eckroat only because of the putter in a putting contest. But, ball striking wise, the guy is great. So, if you're not scared of the putter, maybe look at Eckroat. Bridgman's fine as well. He's played okay lately. I also want to gravitate your attention to Neil Shipley. Although he has been garnering a lot of late attention. He was not nearly this widely owned yesterday on Fantasy National. He's gained a lot of ownership today. So people are starting to come around on Neil Shipley. I like Shipley a lot. I'm going to use Michael Kim, Neil Shipley, Patrick Rogers a lot in my lineups. Probably tells you the kind of lineups I'm building. But I'm going to be using some Shipley. I'll be using some Kazire as well. Good putter. Not great, but good putter. Played well here last year. Tied for 15th. Irons are in form. Plays well when it's easy. Nothing wrong with Patton Kazire. In the mid-sevens, I'm going to go with Justin Lauer. I'm a little concerned about that, though. Because his game has been a little bit erratic. Meaning 1 week he'll, gain a lot with the putter. And then the next week he'll gain off the tee. And then he's kind of been Sungjae-esque in that regard. Kind of whack-a-mole, if you will. So I'm not as confident in Justin Lauer, but I am still going to use him quite a bit. Number one in 400 to 450 par fours, for what it's worth. Also, plays pretty darn well when it's easy. A lot of Fantasy National members are gravitating towards Joe Highsmith. I get it, but I don't have to play him. He was very bad on a couple of other Paspalum courses. Didn't play this last year. So that ownership's just too high for me. Nick Hardy rated out third. I'm not as high on Nick Hardy. Good irons, lots of opportunities. You just got to convert them. That's always been his issue, is converting them. It's fine. You can take a look. 10%'s a little bit, it's probably fair, but I would have liked it to have been in that, maybe 7 to 9%, but it's fine. Carson Young, I talked about him in the reveal of my top 10. Maybe a little bit of a surprise that he jumps into the top 10, but 9th last year, decent irons, gives himself plenty of opportunities, decent enough putter. Again, worth a look. I'm not in love with it, but I certainly don't hate it, as opposed to something like Joe Highsmith's 17% projected ownership. And then at the bottom of the sevens, a couple more names that I want to give you all. Bramlett at 72 is fine. Vincent, he shot 60 a couple tournaments ago. Seems low owned. Looks like he struggles on par threes. Vincent has not putt well lately. And I have some concerns with Vincent. This just does not feel like a good Adam Svensson setup for him. You think about his win. His win was at the RSM. It's short. It's positional, which Elkhart now can be, depending on how you play it. I liked Svensson at the beginning of the fall. This just doesn't feel like a good fit for Svensson. Yeah, and as you mentioned, par threes are bad. Long par fours are bad. He is good around the green, but yeah, I would probably go somewhere else You see, he was quite middling last year, 45th at this tournament. The one benefit of Svensson, at least per Fantasy National, is he's very, very unique. Versus Shipley, I mean, Shipley's double the ownership. I still think I would go with Shipley in that case. I do think Svensson will be more owned in the actual contest. These are just Fantasy National projections. I do think Svensson will be more owned than 6%. I do think he'll be lower owned than Shipley for what it's worth. But I still think I would go with Shipley there. To continue on, take a look at Joseph Bramlett. I mean, if you are a part of Team No Putt, like Doug Gim, Keith Mitchell, if you're on players like that, you've got to look at Joseph Bramlett. Top 15 in irons. Gives himself lots of opportunities, just the putter is atrocious. But if you're playing Team No Putt, you need to look at Joseph Bramlett. But the two players at the bottom of the sevens I want to really point your attention to. First is Austin Smotherman. And to be honest, I wasn't really feeling Austin Smotherman early this week. And then you start digging into his numbers. Top 10 in irons in the fall. Lots of opportunities. But the dude spikes. Like Procore. This is a 5.1. I know it's just off your screen. This is a 5.1. 4.1 earlier, or last year, the John Deere. Like, he's a decent putter. Like, we're not on POA. We're on Paspalum, where he's gained at Vedanta. Plays, well when it's easy. He's also been very good. He's been very, very good on Caribbean courses, on Paspalum courses. So, much like Patrick Rogers, I'm all in on Austin Smotherman. And if he does not play well, I will lose. But those are the two that I am extremely overweight. Michael Kim, I'm overweight too because he's number one in my rankings. But, Austin Smotherman, Patrick Rogers, Michael Kim, overweight on those three heavily. If they do not play well, I will lose. The other person I want to show you in the low sevens is Ryan Gerard. 1% owned. He's coming off the Korn Ferry Tour. He has played PGA Tour events. The guy demolishes par fives and generally plays fairly well when it's easy. I'm not advocating for you to throw Gerard into a bunch of your lineups. But if you're down here in the low sevens and you're not really feeling a Smotherman, you want to get off some chalk elsewhere, Ryan Gerard could be interesting this week. And then in the 6Ks, I actually have a handful of players that I do want to mention to you in case you are building Stars and Scrubs lineups, because I do think there are some viable options. I'll go with the obvious one first. It's Wesley Bryan. He's at 6% per Fantasy National, by far and away the most of any 6K per Fantasy National. But you come across here, he doesn't have a bad statistic. Not a single one. All of them are green or middling. Wesley Bryan is interesting. I'm going to play some Wesley Bryan this week, especially if I'm digging into, or I'm going up to a Grazerman and a Griffin, or a Grazerman and Hostler, or a Grazerman Schmid, or maybe I'm doing triple nines. I'll come down to Wesley Bryan. I don't mind it at all. 5th. Birdies are better when it's easy. He's actually played fairly well this fall and recently, so the first 6K play I want to mention is Wesley Bryan, although he is the most popular 6K play, so be aware of that. The next one is Brandon Wu at 6,500. This is all of it is entirely a play on his performance at comparison courses. He is dominated at Vedanta. No, he hadn't won, but he has played extremely well at Vedanta. But comparison course, also in Mexico, Paspalum greens, long, wide, generous fairways. I know he hasn't been in good form lately. This is a play on the comparison courses. You can take a look at Brandon Wu. The last name I want to mention to you is Ryan Palmer. He finished 5th here last year. That's not much to go on. You're right, it's not. The dude plays easy courses well. When it is easy, you've got to think about Ryan Palmer. He's not as bad of a putter as it may seem. The irons, he's a ball striker. He's better with the irons. He just hasn't been, he's not in good recent form. When it is easy and he can't get into trouble off the tee like he can't at El Cardinal, I mean, unless he's hitting into different area codes, but that presents a whole other issue. Really think about Ryan Palmer when it's easy. Again, I'm not advocating for you to put him in your lineup, but if you're looking for some price savings and the guy played well here last year, I want you to think about Ryan Palmer. All right, let's start making some lineups. We'll start with tiers lineups and then move to classic. Tiers. With Cam Young's withdrawal, we have 2 players in tier 1, Max Grazerman or Ben Griffin. I'll take Grazerman. I'm just more confident in his floor than Ben Griffin. I could see Ben Griffin maybe not necessarily struggling, but I could see him. I don't see Grazerman finishing outside the top 25. Famous last words, clip it whenever he misses the cut or whatever. But I think Max Grazerman's floor is higher. So just give me Grazerman because both of them are going to be extremely chalky since there's only 2 of them. Tier 2, Hostler, Gim, Matty Schmid, Lucas Glover, Harry Hall. Honestly, I wish I could just skip tier 1 and just take 2 or 3 guys from here. I love Hostler, especially if he's going to be the most unique. Matty Schmidt's fine. Glover's great. Harry Hall is probably my pick to win this week, but I can only go by ownerships as they are projected to classic constructions. Give me Bo Hostler in tier 2, especially if you think he's going to be extremely unique. Give me Hostler in tier 2. Tier 3, McNeely, Keith Mitchell, J.J. Spawn, Harris English, Sam Stevens. I like Harris English. I know he's rated horribly, but we talked about it as we went through the price board. Give me Harris English in tier 3. Tier 4, Johnny Vegas, EVR Kuchar, Taylor Moore, Tom Hoagie, Rico Hoey, Patrick Fishburne. Hostler probably would allow us to take Kuchar here if we wanted to. But if I'm going to take chalk, I'll take Rico Hoey. Yeah, I guess give me Rico Hoey here. We're going to have to find a lot of uniqueness, which is part of what Ball Hostler was. Harris English probably isn't the most popular in tier 3. So we can probably take Rico Hoey here. If you're worried about ownership, then go EVR, maybe Fishburne. I think we've got enough uniqueness that we can afford to take Hoey here. So Rico Hoey tier 4. Tier 5, Rogers, Berger, Eckroat, Bridgman, Michael Kims, Vincent, and Shipley. Again, I hate this because I love Patrick Rogers. Michael Kim's my number 1 player. And I really like Neil Shipley as well. But because we've taken Rico Hoey and whoever you take in tier 1 is going to be extremely chalky, probably going to go with Patrick Rogers in tier 5. Michael Kim makes a lot of sense, but he can also make a lot of bogeys. I do think this sets up well for Rogers. So give me Patrick Rogers in tier 5. Finally, tier 6, Smotherman, Trace Crow, S.H. Kim, Scott Piercy, Neesmith, Streelman, Moore. Pretty easy Austin Smotherman. So this tier's construction goes Max Grazerman in Tier 1, Bo Hostler in Tier 2, Tier 3 is Harris English, Tier 4 is Rico Hoey, Tier 5 is Patrick Rogers, Tier 6 is Austin Smotherman. Alright, let's start moving to classic lineups, figure out how we want to, or first figure out what the chalk is, and how we want to maneuver around all that chalk in our big GPPs. So, first question you have to ask yourself of your fellow contestants, are they using Max Grazerman? Are they going to the 10Ks? Let's assume that they are. There's not really a whole lot going on in the 6Ks. I mean, Wesley Bryan at 6%, Brandon Wu at 4%. Really, they're kind of bottoming out at Austin Smotherman, maybe Carson Young. So I'll say Carson Young because I really like Smotherman. We'll say Carson Young again. This could be Smotherman, could be a couple other players. But if they're not dipping into the 6Ks, they're not really able to go into the 9s. Maybe a Harry Hall, maybe. But if they do that, then they'd have to come down into a mid-8 at Matt Kuchar, or maybe even a Rico Hoey. Yeah, that looks more like it. Rico Hoey. And then here in the mid-7s, it's Justin Lauer, maybe Patton Gazier. Yeah, maybe Patton Gazier is a little bit more. And then Joe Highsmith. This is a very, very chalky shell of a lineup. This will get duplicated a bunch. This is horrendous, 111% cumulative ownership. And, I like Grazerman. I'm in love with Hall this week. Rico's fine. Gazier's fine. You just can't put all these players together in the same lineup and expect to do well or rise in your big GPPs because this is just going to get duplicated. If our fellow contestants are doing more balanced, choose where they're starting. Maybe it's Gim, maybe it's Matty Schmid. Maybe they're coming down all the way to Hall or Glover. But I'll go with Matty Schmid and then JJ Spawn, who I'm full fading. Matt Kuchar also fits in this. Yeah, we'll use Kuchar since we used Hoey in the last one. In the maybe upper 7s, you've got Neil Shipley, Patton Gazier, Joe Highsmith probably is the bottom of these balanced lineups. 78. Bridgman's getting a little bit of love, sure. Berger, he might be 100 over. He is 100 over, of course. Eckroat, Bridgman. We'll just throw in Eckroat, I guess. Again, very popular. 105%. Just a lot of ownership here. So we're going to have to find players and or lineup builds to really combat this. The first way to stay off the chalk is to build stars and scrubs, which kind of leads into the poll question. But as opposed to how the standard stars and scrubs build is, let's talk about a variation of it. You can do a 999. You can do, if you wanted to get real crazy, go Max Grazerman in a couple of 9s. But let's try this 999 and maybe even an 8, because there were a few players down here that I liked, or at least wanted to mention to you. Wesley Bryan, Brandon Wu, Ryan Palmer. I'm going to use Ryan Palmer, 1, because of the price savings, 2, because of the extreme uniqueness. More often than not, I'll probably use Wesley Bryan, but I'm just highlighting this as an example. if you're willing to come down into Brian Palmer or Brandon Wu in these areas, you can do a lot of things up here in the top of your lineup. Maybe you want to go Grazerman. You could go maybe maybe you like a Matty Schmid or Doug Gim. I'm just higher on Schmid than Gim. Do a Schmid, Glover, Lucas Glover, Harry Hall. Do like a 999 instead of your 10-9-8. You can still probably even do a low 8 here. Like for me, it would be Patrick Rogers. That's why I really like Rogers this week, because he fits no matter if you're in a Stars and Scrubs or in a balanced build because of his pricing. You know, and his ownership is fine. Don't get carried away with this cumulative ownership. You're probably going to be somewhat unique if you're willing to go like 999, dropping down all the way to Ryan Palmer. This leaves you 72, which there's plenty of options. You know, Carson Young, Joseph Bramlett. I talked about Smotherman, even Ryan Gerard. Let's do Carson Young just to round this out. I mean, with these three behemoth ownerships, you're still sub 90% cumulative. You're probably going to be pretty unique if you're throwing Young and Ryan Palmer in the same lineup. Rogers doesn't seem to be getting a whole lot of attention. That's the way you're going to have to get your uniqueness in these Stars and Scrubs lineups. You're going to have to get creative, do your 999s, or I don't think you can do it, but do like a Grazerman, let's say Doug Gim. Let's go Team No Putt. Doug Gim, Keith Mitchell. I mean, you're still at 7,200 for two players here. That's a lot. So that's why I was suggesting to go with the 999 and maybe an 8. Like the kind of variation of the Stars and Scrubs. That's one way you can do it. Otherwise, you're just going to have to try to beat these balanced builds in terms of construction. And the way you're going to do that, at least per Fantasy National, is Bo Hostler. I mean, he is by far and away the most unique player, and I really like him this week. So I've been doing a lot of Bo Hostler. I can still come into the 9s if I want to, go like a Bo Hostler, Harry Hall, Bo Hostler, Lucas Glover, maybe even a Harris English. I know he's 8,900, but I've kind of considered him 9,000 because I'm not using Johnny Vegas or Sam Stevens. For this, let's go. I really like Harry Hall. It's just going to balloon the ownership, but I really like Harry Hall. And again, at the bottom, I'm using Austin Smotherman to bottom this team out. Honestly, I don't mind using Ryan Gerard once or twice either, if you're really looking for a lot of uniqueness. But I'll go with Smotherman. And we're left with 8,000 per player. Another way you can gain uniqueness is by leaving money on the table. And that's what I've been doing quite a bit as well this week. I'll go all the way down to Patrick Rogers. Again, a lot of uniqueness. I think this sets up well for him. I'm going to go with Michael Kim, number 1 in my rankings. He's at 11%. I'm hoping that, maybe we get sub 10% Michael Kim would be great. But even if not, I think Michael Kim has the ability to make bunches of birdies. That's what you need this week. I mean, if you're confident that this is unique enough, like you could throw Rico Hoey into this and call it a day. You're going to balloon your ownership a little bit. You could go Neil Shipley. You go Patton Kazire. Go wherever you want to round this out. But the more money you're willing to leave on the table, the more unique you're going to be, the more chance you have of rising in your big GPPs. So but I think this would be the lineup probably. You're just ballooning the ownership a little bit thanks to Rico Hoey and Harry Hall. Like, you know, maybe you go Lucas Glover and come off of Hoey to Jacob Bridgman. That's going to drop it quite a bit. Go Glover, and then Hoey becomes Jacob Bridgman. You know, you're losing 15, 16% cumulative ownership in that way. Coming off of Harry Hall and Rico Hoey. That's what I have for you all for the evening. A couple of answers here to the poll question. Looks like reasonable and not at all. That's fair. I'm actually going to say that stars and scrubs are very viable. I do think they're very viable because you can come down to Wesley Bryan, who I'm going to use more than once. You got Brandon Wu. Gosh dang it. You got Brandon Wu and Ryan Palmer. You got options here down in the 6Ks. So I do think stars and scrubs are very viable. And that appears to be the way to be unique in lineup construction against a lot of our fellow contestants. So my answer is very viable. I want to thank Awaken for jumping in the chat. And I want to thank everyone else out there for tuning in, watching, listening, supporting the channel by liking the videos, commenting, and subscribing. I always appreciate it. I love what I do, taking a very in-depth look at golf statistics, giving you a statistician and data analyst's view of what he sees, trying to help us all win a little bit of money in the process. We've got 3 weeks left in the PGA Tour season or calendar year. We're going to try to finish off strong. A reminder that I'm going to be over in Gabe's Substack chat momentarily, right after the stream, and be on the lookout for my betting card and the players I'm using most often in my lineups. I always post that to social media or to X later on in the evening. So thanks again for all the support. For all the wagers you have made this week for the Worldwide Technologies, for all the DFS contests you play this week for the Worldwide Technologies, for this weekend and every weekend, may all your bets be profitable.